Cars are not great investments. I don't care what kind of car it is, what make or model it is. It's not a great investment.
There's a lease, and then there's a Mercedes-Benz First Class Lease.
It just protects you from depreciation. You don't own the car. So at the end of the lease, you have the option to purchase the car at a price, or here's the keys. Now I want to go to a car instead of an SUV, or an SUV instead of a car.
The lease actually puts your total cost into one bucket, right? I mean, aside from putting fuel or paying insurance, I know what my cost is, and that's why I prefer to lease, because it's a fixed exposure.
If you bought the car for cash, your money ultimately is depreciating. It's not making you any money because it's in a piece of iron.
It takes away the market exposure, right? So the market exposure is, the unknown. What is the vehicle going to be worth in 3 years at 50,000 miles? And the interesting thing is that with Mercedes, it's a 50,000 mile warranty, from the manufacturer. So if you pull in here and you want to trade it in, and it has 51,000 miles. Well, there's some exposure there for the person that bought the vehicle, whereas in the lease, if you turn it in with 51,000 miles, there's no exposure there.
In a lease, of course, you know what you're paying per mile.
And to me, that's one of the great benefits of the First Class Lease through Mercedes-Benz, is that on most all the models, it's above the standard mileage, it's 20 cents per mile. So if it's an S-Class, the market may be 70 cents per mile as far as cost of ownership.
If you're buying a car, the depreciation is probably 50 to 80 cents a mile, opposed to a lease at 20 cents a mile.
You're better buying more miles in the lease at 20 cents than you are being exposed to what the market is really penalizing you for those miles.
When you are putting those miles on a car, it really accelerates the depreciation.
And then you ask them how many miles they drive per year, and they say, well, somewhere around 15,000 miles a year, which is really technically a standard mileage lease for Mercedes-Benz. You get somebody that drives 25,000 miles a year, or 20,000 miles, or 30,000 miles a year, in the lease you can calculate that up front. You can say, okay, here's the base payment, here's what it costs to add those additional miles, and you have a fixed expense.
We have options of all your maintenance being included in the lease.
So with the First Class Lease through Mercedes, you can also residualize the maintenance, and so what that effectively means is you're paying the depreciation only on that maintenance.
With technology changing now, and you know this with your phone or with the latest greatest TV that you bought, it just changes so rapid. Most people like to be in the latest technology in anything.
The body styling changing, with the safety features changing as frequent as they are, that people are more comfortable transitioning every few years to keep up with the change. You have more options in the lease. You can turn the vehicle in at the end of the lease and get another Mercedes-Benz, and that's the option that most people exercise. You can buy the vehicle at the end of the lease at the residual value, and that's part of the contract. That value is predetermined. Some people do that. Some people drive fewer miles in the lease that they set out to, and they find that that's the best option for them. You can also trade the lease in, and then you can also transfer a lease. So you have more flexibility in the lease as far as what your options are, whereas if you buy the car, then you simply can trade it in.
We have a lot of ways to protect you in your lease that there's no surprises.
So the Loyalty Accelerator through Mercedes-Benz, the program changes, but my experience has been a minimum of 3 payments that they credit to your account should you go into another Mercedes-Benz lease.
In other words, pay some remaining payments that you have and pull you forward into a new car to keep you loyal to the brand.
So if you have a 36-month lease, as an example, at month 33, Mercedes will actually take care of those 3 remaining payments to allow you to go into another Mercedes-Benz lease sooner. One pay is it's like the next level lease, which there's a lot of people that obviously can walk into a Mercedes-Benz dealership and pay cash for a vehicle. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way to do it, particularly on the more expensive models, right? Because, if you have a $100,000 or a $200,000 vehicle, well, what's that vehicle that they're paying cash for today going to be worth in 3 years? It's an unknown, but you can look to the lease residuals and kind of make a determination on that basis. Instead of giving me, $100,000, you only have to give me $50,000. You get to keep your other $50,000. Well, what we've had happen is, instead of buying just one vehicle, they'll lease two. First class finish it really is one of the most exceptional parts of the lease. And so Mercedes-Benz is extremely, forgiving coming out of the lease. So there's a credit card rule. You can put a credit card over it as long as there's not protrusion into the side panels, but dents and scratches, minor things that you accumulate over time in a period of a few years. Mercedes actually allows you to turn it in with normal wear and tear.